So, by the end of Jujutsu Kaisen, there were only a few sorcerers left with potential to become special grade, and today we're ranking the top candidates. To start things off, we should probably break down what special grade means, because in chapter 203, Kenjaku described it as having the ability to overthrow nations. This implies that a special grade sorcerer should be able to defeat a whole country with some kind of widespread destructive power. At the same time, not every special grade needs this kind of attack, and one of the best examples is Principal Yaga. Years ago, the higher-ups were desperate to classify Yaga as special grade due to the fact he created Panda. Their reasoning was that Yaga had potential to create an infinite number of these things, and since Panda produces his own cursed energy, an army of pandas wouldn't die even if Yaga himself was killed. In theory, this puppet army could take over a country, and the higher-ups were so afraid that they tried to lock Yaga away forever. To avoid life in prison, Yaga pretended like he didn't know how to make more, but if he'd been fully honest, then he would have officially been special grade alongside Gojo and the others. This shows us the flaws of the special grade system, because although Yaga is great, I don't think anyone here believes that you could rely on him to take down a special grade curse of like Mahito's level. Logically, a special grade sorcerer should be someone who you always expect to beat a special grade curse, but under the current system, the only thing that really matters is whether you can overthrow a country. Why is this the requirement? Well, in chapter 210, we found out that the Jujutsu higher-ups are the ones in charge of Japan, meaning anyone who could overthrow a country is a direct threat to their power. That explains why the higher-ups viewed Yaga as special grade. It has nothing to do with his ability to exercise curses, and instead it has everything to do with his potential to take down them. In chapter 18, Gojo confirmed this when he said the conservatives only care about maintaining their own power and traditions. For these reasons, the definition of special grade is inherently corrupt, because it's essentially a tool for the higher-ups to keep tabs on anyone they can't control. Now, major spoiler warning ahead, but later in the manga, these higher-ups all get massacred by Gojo. Although I can't show it because I don't want to get demonetized, just know that all the people who tried to keep him locked in the prison realm were torn to shreds by him when he escaped. This paved the way for the newer generation to take charge, especially now that the most conservative clans have been destroyed. If the Zenin clan does ever return, it'll obviously be a lot better now that Megumi's in charge, and likewise, if the Kamo clan returns, Yuji has a very strong case to take over. As the son of two previous clan leaders and as the only active sorcerer with blood manipulation, the seeds have clearly been planted for Itadori to have the strongest claim. Similarly, following Gojo's death, the Gojo clan chose Yuta to be their new representative, so no matter how you look at it, Gojo students are in place to be the leaders of Jujutsu Society. As a result, the conservative definition of special grade will have to change, given that this new generation isn't so corrupt. It's easy to forget, but the true purpose of the grading system is not just for vanity, like there is a reason, it's because you need to know which sorcerers can be sent on which missions. The problem with the conservative definition is that a sorcerer who consistently handles special grade missions will never be special grade himself unless he can overthrow nations. For obvious reasons, that's kind of dumb, and so for this video we'll be ranking characters based on both the conservative definition and the common sense definition. The common sense definition is simple, it's just a sorcerer who you can confidently send to deal with any special grade mission. That's it, that's the whole purpose of the grading system. Okay, so starting off with the number 1 ranked character, Yuji Itadori is the first person on this list. During the Shinjuku showdown, Yuji was theorized to have the same potential as Sukuna, and he's the one who I think is most likely to be officially labeled special grade. After just 7 months of training, he went from learning about cursed energy for the first time to whipping out reverse curse technique, a domain expansion, and the most black flashes in history. This skill level is something that even experienced grade 1 sorcerers never reach, but for a variety of reasons, Yuji is literally built different. If we look at the conservative definition of special grade, then he's displayed powers that in time will allow him to overthrow a country. The most relevant power is his Shrine Curse technique, which was engraved into his body due to being Sukuna's vessel for half a year. Despite Yuji's shrine looking different, it still fundamentally works the same way, and on that basis it gives him 3 huge benefits. Benefit number 1 is Dismantle, which is the invisible slashing attack that cuts through targets from a distance or even at close range. Having activated this technique only once, Yuji displayed a precise understanding of how to use it, including when he used Dismantle to try and separate Sukuna's soul from Megumi's body. If a sorcerer is skilled enough, the target of Dismantle can be modified so that it cuts through the fabric of space itself, and this move is referred to as the slash that cuts the world. Manga readers will know that this slash is the one that killed Gojo and sliced Yuta in half, making it arguably the most deadly move in all of Jujutsu that doesn't involve sacrificing yourself. For Sukuna, he used outside help to figure out how to do this, but the fact is, any shrine user has the potential to work it out for themselves. Given that Yuji is only 15 and still pretty new to the world of sorcery, he has more than enough time to unlock the slash that cuts the world, if he has the motivation. Essentially, it would turn him into the Gojo equivalent of this generation, aka the one you call to quickly deal with threats that would kill almost anyone else. The next two benefits of Shrine are Cleave, which is the deep slash that requires contact, and Divine Flame. Divine Flame is the thing that vaporized Mahoraga, but to use it to its full ability, Yuji will have to get better at his open domain because he doesn't have that yet, and also using Binding Vows to his advantage. If he improves on that, then overthrowing nations should be easy. However, the one thing that might let Yuji down is his cursed energy reserves. For context, the amount of cursed energy someone has is mostly determined from a young age, and from the first chapter, Yuji was confirmed to have a low amount. This is in direct contrast to other special grades like Gojo, Yuta, and Sukuna, whose reserves are almost unlimited to the point they've never seriously worried about running out. That said, in Yuji's situation, he did learn how to efficiently control the reserves he has, and then he increased those reserves by eating 6 of his brothers. To be specific, the Cursed Womb death paintings, like Chozo, are all half-human, half-cursed hybrids. For 150 years they were locked away, but in the first season, Mahito stole 3 of them, while the other 6 remained at Jujutsu Hive. Before the Shinjuku Showdown, Yuji ate the remaining 6, and in the process gained their cursed energy and their blood manipulation curse technique. If we assume that each of the 6 death paintings had reserves similar to the other death paintings, then it's possible that Yuji might now have the highest reserves of anyone besides Yuta. Now, although the purpose of this video isn't to detail every single ability that each character has, I did want to briefly mention blood manipulation. This legendary technique has a ton of different applications, and one of the smartest uses of it is a move called Flowing Red Scale. This is where the user increases all of their physical stats by altering their blood to increase the flow of oxygen, among other things. In Season 1, Megumi described it as doping, and now the physically strongest character, Yuji, can just dope whenever he wants. For all these reasons, Itadori has everything he needs to one day be special grade. In fact, if we go by the common sense definition, then he's basically there already. Now, the next sorcerer is a failed comedian with the power to warp reality using jokes. Despite initially being a gag character, Takaba has proven time and time again that he genuinely is special grade level. For context, Takaba is a brand new sorcerer whose technique recently awakened right before the Culling Games. Since then, he's faced off against various threats, including a special grade curse, a special grade sorcerer, and more, coming out unscathed every single time. In fact, the narrator claimed that Takaba has what it takes to challenge Gojo, so let's break down why he's so powerful. The name of Takaba's technique is comedian, and the way it works is that when he thinks something is funny, that joke then becomes real. For example, there was one fight he had against a highly skilled, probably grade 1 sorcerer, and Takaba thought it would be funny if his own body was protected by a layer of sauce. Just by thinking that, his body was then actually covered in sauce, and the attacks that would usually kill other people just bounced right off him. Likewise, there was another situation where Kenjaku summoned a special grade curse, and Takaba thought it would be funny if the curse got run over by a truck. In this moment, the special grade then got one-shotted by a figment of Takaba's imagination, and to put that in perspective, he took out a special grade curse without any domain, without any kind of help, and without any kind of effort. He just did it by thinking it'd be funny. Kenjaku even remarked how Takaba's power is unlike anything he's experienced in the 1,000+ years he's been alive. What's amazing about this technique is that Takaba himself doesn't know how it works, he doesn't even know that he has it, but because he lives to entertain people, he's just always making jokes. If anyone else had this power, it wouldn't work the same way, since most people are too self-conscious to be making dumb jokes all the time. For Takaba though, that doesn't matter, and pretty much his only weakness is that he truly has to believe his joke is funny. This means if he has low confidence, then you can win against him, but the problem is that his confidence is nearly unshakable. Remember, earlier I described him as a failed comedian, and that's because at the age of 35, he still hadn't found any success. Despite that failure, he never stopped making jokes, because his underlying motivation for trying to make people laugh is to connect with other humans. This brings us to the ultimate question: does he meet the requirements for what it means to be special grade? The answer is mostly yes, because if Takaba thought it would be funny to overthrow a country, then his technique would generate what he needs, whether that's a nuclear warhead or something else. We've seen his technique does manifest things into reality. On the other hand, we've also seen that Takaba's technique affects the minds of other people and begins making them have thoughts that they would never usually have. In that way, Takaba could take over a country without any violence, and instead he could do it by warping the minds of people in power or warping the minds of the population. This option is more feasible, I guess, since he doesn't like to kill people, but either way, I think the biggest obstacle that might stop him from being special grade is his lack of interest in Jujutsu. Like I said before, he has no idea about his curse technique, and he doesn't seem like the type to abandon comedy to pursue a career as a sorcerer. In fact, the final time we see him, he was discussing jokes with his new partner, who may or may not be a resurrected version of Kenjaku that he created with his technique. Bearing this in mind, Takaba obviously has special grade potential, but as he is right now, you can't rely on him in the way that you could rely on Yuji, for example. Now, moving on to third place, we have Maki Zenin, who was famously the one sorcerer that couldn't see curses. Due to her having no curse technique and a low amount of cursed energy, Maki was labeled as worthless by her own dad, and behind the scenes, her family tried to keep her stuck as a grade 4 sorcerer. Of course, she got her revenge when she massacred the entire Zenin clan, so let's explain how she went from a grade 4 sorcerer to a special grade level threat. As we know, Maki was born with a heavenly restriction, which gave her above average physical strength in exchange for having almost no curse energy. Usually, someone like this could never be a sorcerer, but by wearing these glasses that allowed her to see curses, she met the minimum requirement to do the job. However, the truth is that Maki never had a chance of being special grade until the death of her twin sister Mai. In Jujutsu Society, twins are considered to be bad luck since they're essentially one sorcerer split into two different bodies. What that means is that as an individual, a twin can't reach their full potential while the other twin is still alive. This was confirmed by Mai in chapter 149, and as a quick side note, another example of twins was Sukuna and Yuji's grandpa. 1,000 years ago, these two were supposed to be born together as twins, but Sukuna messed things up by eating his brother in the womb. In Sukuna's defense, he apparently only did this because he was starving, but as a result, Sukuna had the freedom to reach his full potential. Likewise, when Mai was wounded by her dad and eventually died, Maki unlocked the full potential of heavenly restriction. To start with, when Mai died, she took away all of Maki's curse energy, putting Maki in the same bracket as Toji. Quick reminder, Toji's ridiculous strength was a result of him having no curse energy, which was different to Maki, who still had a tiny amount. That's why Mai's death changed everything, because it upgraded all of Maki's stats to an insane degree, even allowing her to see cursed spirits without any cursed energy. What followed this was her single-handedly wiping out the Zenin clan, and to understand how impressive this was, let's explain a few of her victims. The first person to die was her dad Ogi Zenin, who was a highly experienced grade 1 sorcerer. As we know, grade 1 is the highest rank that most sorcerers can achieve, and generally speaking, they're seen as the role models of Jujutsu Society. Despite that, it only took one swing for Maki to slice through Ogi's skull using the soul split katana that Mai had created. Maki's next real test was when she faced off against the Hei, who were the strongest sorcerers in the entire Zenin clan. This human gorilla is Megumi's uncle Junichi, and he's another grade 1. I mean, in the manga they call him special grade 1, but that's literally just a grade 1 sorcerer who works outside of Jujutsu High. Junichi's technique lets him manifest these giant fists made of cursed energy, but with her new body, Maki just tanked it and then chopped off his head. After him, her most impressive victory was against Naoya, who was one of the fastest living sorcerers. Like his father, Naoya had projection sorcery, allowing him to make 24 different movements in a single second. Normally, that means he looks like a blur to most people, but thanks to Maki's upgrades, she was able to perceive each individual movement and then crush him. Objectively speaking, there's almost no one left by the end of JJK who could defeat 3 grade 1 sorcerers back to back plus an entire clan on top of that, so this is where we begin the argument for Maki being special grade. In terms of physical stats, I don't think anyone except Yuji even compares to her, and she has other qualities as well that make her better than most sorcerers. For example, because she has no curse energy, it makes her movements nearly impossible to predict. Yuji explained how sorcerers can predict the moves of other sorcerers by seeing where their curse energy flows, and even for someone with insane control like Gojo, his curse energy still gives off a rough idea of how he's going to use his technique. In Maki's case though, none of that applies, giving her the chance to surprise people even inside their own domains. During the Culling Games, Maki had her second major power-up, with the manga describing her as now being a fighter equal to Toji Zenin. In this state, she was quite literally able to walk on air, and even Sukuna acknowledged that she could perceive his curse technique, his invisible slashes, better than almost anyone else. When you combine that with her ability to freely enter and exit any barrier due to no curse energy, the end result is a freakishly strong and durable fighter who can't be trapped inside barriers and whose moves are nearly impossible to predict. Therefore, based on the common sense definition of special grade, she easily meets that requirement, but for the conservative definition, yeah, I do think it is a bit hard for her to overthrow a nation. Megumi Fushiguro is the 4th potential special grade, and by far he was the hardest character to rank. The problem with Megumi is that when this series ends, we have no idea whether his technique is broken or like broken. As we all know, Fushiguro's power is the 10 Shadows technique, which gives him the potential to unlock 10 useful Shikigami. In chapter 212, which is one of my favorite chapters, his body got stolen by the King of Curses, and from that moment, Sukuna began unlocking each Shikigami by himself. In theory, this meant that if Megumi ever got his body back, he'd have full control over Mahoraga. This is where things get tricky though, because by the end of the manga, we have so little information that it's probable Mahoraga is gone forever, but it's also possible, based on what we've seen, that Megumi might be able to unlock him in the future. To explain how, we have to know that during the Shinjuku Showdown, Mahoraga was completely vaporized by Gojo. Now, you might say Mahoraga was destroyed once before and still came back, but that was during a ritual, which is something that 10 Shadows users can do over and over again. The difference is that when Gojo destroyed Mahoraga, there was no ritual, meaning the Shikigami should be permanently dead. Having said that, as long as the official translations are correct, then there is concrete evidence to suggest that Sukuna's 10 Shadows are separate from Megumi's 10 Shadows. If we think of it like a game, imagine that Megumi had a saved file containing all of the Shikigami he has and hasn't unlocked. What if when Sukuna took over, he gained his own copy of that file, giving him access to everything Fushiguro had, but allowing him to save his own progress? If that's the case, it would explain a lot of things, like how in chapter 266, Sukuna mentioned how his 10 Shadows had stopped functioning, while Megumi's 10 Shadows was working fine. This statement clearly shows there is a difference between the two, which is something that was hinted at by Higuruma. Higuruma's theory was that Sukuna lost 10 Shadows in the fight against Gojo, and I want to reiterate he was referring to the Gojo fight, not the fight with Kashimo, which is when he took a few hits and then eventually transformed. During the Gojo fight, there was only one event that would cause Sukuna's 10 Shadows to get corrupted, and that was Mahoraga's death. As the crown jewel of the technique, it's feasible that when Mahoraga dies, the technique dies with him, and Sukuna's statement could be interpreted as confirmation of that. Therefore, if Mahoraga's death is what stopped him from ever using 10 Shadows again, then the fact Megumi still has 10 Shadows in the final chapter indicates that his Mahoraga is still alive. If this is true, then he still have to do the ritual to gain control of him, but there's one reason why he now has a chance. The final arc showed us that in this series, muscle memory is a very important thing, and when it comes to Fushiguro, his body was used consistently for special grade jujutsu. For over a month, Megumi's body performed reverse curse technique, domain amplification, shrine, hollow wicker basket, and countless domain expansions. By comparison, Sukuna was in control of Yuji for less than an hour, and that short experience made it easier for Yuji to learn advanced techniques. Following that logic, Megumi's time as Sukuna's vessel will drastically increase his understanding of Jujutsu, and I wouldn't be surprised if around the time of the final chapter, or slightly after this, he's able to complete a full domain expansion. All things considered, Megumi will undoubtedly be a special grade threat, but I ranked him below Maki due to the uncertainty around Mahoraga. If he never gets Mahoraga, then, he can still reach special grade level for sure, but he might not be as effective as Maki. Switching over to 5th place, we have Hiromi Higuruma, aka the man with talent equal to Gojo. Besides having a great technique, Hiromi's best asset is his natural understanding of cursed energy. Unlike Yuji, who had help from various teachers and also Sukuna, Higuruma worked out everything he knows from scratch just completely by himself. In less than 2 months, he went from being a regular civilian to someone with a better perception of cursed energy than grade 1 sorcerers. This was proven many times, but one example is how he instinctively learnt reverse curse technique on the spot and did one of the best feats in the series by, regenerating his whole arm. Another example is how in this chapter, the strongest grade 1 sorcerer, Kusakabe, admitted that he had no idea how to do domain amplification. Meanwhile, after seeing it done one time, Higuruma said that he understood it and proceeded to do it himself later that same day. I could go on, but like the narrator said, Higuruma has a natural talent equal to Gojo. The name of his domain expansion is Deadly Sentencing, and it's directly inspired by Higuruma's career as a lawyer. Inside this courtroom, no one is able to use violence, including Higuruma himself, but in exchange he gets to put his victims on trial. The judge of this trial is a Shikigami called Judgeman, and Judgeman knows everything about every soul in the domain. Therefore, Judgeman is aware of every crime a person has committed, no matter how major or minor it might be, and he provides Higuruma with random evidence that may or may not be useful to convict them. As a genius lawyer, Higuruma always makes a convincing argument, but that being said, his victim does have the chance to confess or even to deny that they ever did the crime. If they deny doing it, then the result of the case will purely depend on Higuruma's argument and also what the evidence was that was in the envelope. The normal punishment for being found guilty is a thing known as confiscation, where Judgeman temporarily removes the victim's curse technique. I probably don't need to explain why that's a ridiculous power to have, and according to Higuruma, when a person loses their technique, it also weakens their basic control of curse energy. In other words, this domain is the ultimate weapon against other sorcerers, but especially the ones who heavily rely on their techniques. Now, why do I think he's a future special grade? Well, I'll start by admitting that there's no way he's gonna overthrow a country, but his talent is good enough that he could theoretically kill anyone else on this list. One of the reasons I say that is due to his executioner's sword, which is the only weapon in JJK that's guaranteed to kill no matter what. Without exception, anyone cut by this sword will die, regardless of how much stronger they might be. In the Shinjuku showdown, he even used it against Sukuna, and the King of Curses was forced to slice off his own hand before contact. Generally speaking, every special grade sorcerer has at least one move that's almost guaranteed to kill, but as we've seen with Yuki's Black Hole and with Gojo's Hollow Purple, there are still ways to survive it. Higuruma's is the first where it truly will work no matter what. As long as you slice someone and their body part is attached to them, then they're gonna die, and there is no ifs or buts about that. For now, he's only able to access this sword when Judgeman gives someone the death penalty, but I did have a theory for how he might get it more often. Following the Shinjuku showdown, we know that Higuruma does have reverse curse technique, and it means he has the potential to use curse technique reversal. Curse technique reversal is when you fuel your curse technique using the positive energy created from reverse curse technique. Ordinarily, this makes your technique do the opposite of its normal function, and unlike most people, Higuruma's technique is directly tied to his domain expansion. Therefore, if Higuruma was to fuel his normal technique using positive energy, what exactly would that look like for him? Well, I had an idea and I think it could work, and this was the idea of a rigged trial. Remember, even for someone as evil as Sukuna, Higuruma said that him getting the death penalty was a long shot due to certain technicalities. A rigged trial would remove any room for doubt, and what I mean by rigged is that Higuruma himself would get to select the charge, and he'd be able to select the evidence as well. To add to this, maybe he could select multiple charges rather than just one, but let me know in the comments if you have another idea for how his curse technique reversal might manifest. Either way, my main point was that by using curse technique reversal, you might be able to get a situation where you can access the executioner's sword more easily perhaps, but who knows, maybe he doesn't even need to take it that far. Maybe Higuruma will reach a point where he can just manifest it regardless of any trial. Anyway, the 6th potential special grade is Kinji Hakari, who's a serial gambler that got suspended by Jujutsu High. Hakari's technique is based on a pachinko slot machine, which is like a regular slot machine except that it has a storyline attached to it. The storyline attached to his domain is a romantic comedy called Private Pure Love Train, but we don't actually need to know the plot. All we have to know is that the aim of any slot machine is to get 3 of the same number, and if that happens, then you hit the jackpot. I'll break down what Hakari's jackpot does in a second, but just be aware that his odds of hitting the jackpot are incredibly low. The manga states that for every 239 tries, you'll probably only hit 1 jackpot, but because Hakari is him, he's never needed more than 30 tries. During the Cullen games, we saw that when Hakari gets 2 of the same number, the game enters something called a Ricci scenario. This is where the story element kicks in, because the domain will show you one of 4 cutscenes from Private Pure Love Train. To put it simply, each cutscene has both a good ending and a bad ending, with varying chances of success. So some cutscenes are likely to give the good ending, whereas others are more likely to give the bad ending. If Hakari is lucky, then the good ending will play out, and this will allow him to get the 3rd number that he needs. With 3 of the same number, the jackpot is then finally triggered, which grants Hakari an infinite supply of curse energy. For just over 4 minutes, he effectively becomes immortal, since his curse energy is so vast that his body automatically heals with reverse curse technique. Orame described his healing speed as being faster than Sukuna and Gojo, which is a crazy thing to think about, considering that Hakari doesn't actually know reverse curse technique. He doesn't know how to do it, it just happens automatically because he has that much curse energy. More than that, by having infinite curse energy, it means that any attack he makes will be supported by 100% of his output. In other words, when Hakari hits the jackpot, every punch that Hakari makes will be at his full potential. What makes this interesting is that in chapter 157, Yuji said that no matter how little strength Hakari puts into his punches, they always do damage. This is due to the nature of his cursed energy, which is naturally more jagged than other sorcerers. However, the big problem for Hakari that he needs to fix if he wants to be special grade is that he has no real finishing moves. So far in this video, everyone has had the potential to defeat a special grade curse in one move, whether that's through a lethal domain, the executioner's sword, Mahoraga, or the soul split katana. There is a way for them to do it. For Kinji, he relies solely on punches and kicks, which is why against the truly strong opponents, the fight just goes on forever. To be able to rely on him as a special grade sorcerer, he needs to develop something that will finish off opponents quickly rather than just stalling them. Unfortunately, even with infinite curse energy, he doesn't seem to have the same output as someone like Yuta or Ryu. Like, he's not able to do those curse energy blasts, or at least he hasn't shown that he's been able to do it. As long as that remains the case, then I fear his ceiling will be a grade 1 sorcerer, but if you have an idea for how he might improve his offensive power, then let me know in the comments down below. Moving on, we have Todo, who someone Gojo thought had potential to reach a level above special grade. As we know, Todo played a huge role in taking down Sukuna, Mahito, and Kenjaku, and was actually the only person to be involved in all 3 of these kills. His boogie woogie technique lets him swap the positions of anything with cursed energy, which comes in majorly handy for confusing opponents. Originally, this swap was something he activated by clapping, but after losing his hand against Mahito, Todo replaced it with a vibroslap. This musical instrument, which I had honestly never even heard or seen of in my life, it allows him to perform roughly 50 swaps in a single second, making Boogie Woogie by far the best support technique in the entire series. During the final battle, he swapped Yuji into some great positions to attack Sukuna, while also subbing in Angel and subbing out Miwa, which by extension subbed out Maki as well. Even before he had Vibroslap, Todo's best quality, in my opinion, was his ability to quickly analyze any situation and then make the perfect judgment 99.9% of the time. In fact, you could even say 100% of the time, because I'm struggling to think of a single moment where he made the wrong decision. Even though the other sorcerers don't see him as the strongest grade 1, I'm gonna be honest, I think he probably is the strongest grade 1, or at the very least the most useful. Just by him being somewhere, just by his presence alone, that's enough to make curses feel unsure and uncertain about themselves, because they're always trying to, anticipate when he's going to do the swap. That uncertainty that he generates, it creates openings for other people to take advantage, but, of course, Todo can handle things by himself as well. He doesn't have to be a support person. Thanks to Megumi, we know that during the events of JJK0, Todo single-handedly defeated a special grade curse and 5 grade 1 curses on top. Having been trained by the special grade sorcerer Yuki Tsukumo, Todo has a fundamental understanding of curse energy, to the extent that I am genuinely surprised that he doesn't already have reverse curse technique. One thing I will say though, out of all the characters that don't currently have a domain expansion, Todo has the right combination of motivation, IQ, and fearlessness to be the next person to work it out. When he does, that could be his finishing move if he has to deal with multiple special grades, because ultimately, as a special grade sorcerer, that should be the minimum requirement. Next up, we have Angel, who's someone that had incredible aura when she was first introduced, but with every appearance, things just got worse and worse. For context, Angel is a sorcerer from the Middle East 1,000 years ago who currently lives inside the body of a modern day human. That human is Hana Kurusu, who's someone that Megumi and Gojo saved when she was younger, and her decision making skills are questionable at best. Unlike the other reincarnated sorcerers, Angel and Hana share this body together, so I guess the best comparison would be like if Yuji and Sukuna were friends. It's basically like that. Angel's curse technique is one that gives her an ability named Jacob's Ladder, and it negates all other curse techniques, including barriers and special grade objects. This power is how Gojo was freed from the prison realm, because she just blasted it with a Jacob's Ladder, but after Sukuna tore off her arm, the King of Curses mentioned how Hana's output had become weaker. In other words, Jacob's Ladder was too overpowered, so Gege did some shenanigans so that she would never ever be at full potential. As far as we've seen, Angel doesn't possess any advanced techniques that you'd expect from a special grade sorcerer, and what I mean by that is things like reverse curse technique and a domain expansion, or simple domain, or hollow wicker basket. She's not shown us any of that, so as far as we know, she is just a one-trick pony. Therefore, although the concept of her technique is broken, I would say that right now, in Hana's current state, she's not someone that you would send alone to deal with multiple special grade curses. One day she might get there if she decides to actually, pick up a book and learn some advanced techniques, but for now, I would say she's purely potential and not special grade level just yet. Finally, this last character I included mainly just for fun, and that is Mei's younger brother, Wee Wee. Interesting name, by the way. According to the official guidebook, all Wee Wee wants is to be his sister's property, hence why he needs her permission to use Jujutsu. In that sense, he's completely just her puppet, but if we go by the conservative definition of special grade, then he actually might meet that requirement. Although Wee Wee has a great technique that lets him teleport over large distances and swap the souls of people who consent, the real reason why Wee Wee might be special grade is because of New Shadow Style. In case you might not know, Simple Domain, also known as New Shadow Style Simple Domain, is a technique used by sorcerers to protect themselves from a domain expansion or even something crazy like a maximum Uzumaki. In one of the final chapters, we found out that there was a leader of Simple Domain and that she was the one in charge of all of her disciples being people who use Simple Domain. Because of certain binding vows, this woman was able to literally drain the life force of her disciples, and apparently if she summoned her disciples, then they couldn't refuse. Now, before the Shinjuku Showdown, Mei killed this leader, and somehow the new leader then became Kusakabe. As the new head, Kusakabe undid many of the binding vows, especially the one related to life force, but in the future, Wee Wee is confirmed to be the next leader. With that being the case, while I fully trust Kusakabe to not abuse his power, we can't deny Mei is someone you can never fully trust due to her Mr. Krabs-like obsession with just making money. She even mentioned something about doing a monthly subscription fee for New Shadow Style, but what I'm thinking is, if in the future she becomes more ambitious, what could Mei do with Wee Wee in charge of New Shadow Style? The obvious answer is that through Wee Wee, she could raise an army of New Shadow Style users and essentially take over the Jujutsu world. Now, do I think they will do that? No, I don't think so. But if we put ourselves in the shoes of the conservatives, the people who are scared of everything, then one day we would have to say he's special grade because, ultimately, he does have that power to take over a country, or he will have it once he's in charge of Simple Domain. Anyhow, those were all the potential special grades left in Jujutsu Kaisen, but yeah, don't be afraid to let me know your own rankings down below, and also, shout out to Crackduck, who was the inspiration for me editing today's video like this. As always, thank you guys for watching, and until the next one, peace out.